Welcome and welcome back, everybody, to the OK Grognard Show. It is Thursday, May 13th, 2021, 10 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And we are continuing with the first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide section on spell explanations. This is part 3. It's a large section. It's one we haven't previously tackled, in part because it is very large, but also in part because I guess some of the explanations seem unnecessary, and obviously that wasn't true then, or they wouldn't have bothered to write them. And maybe part of what I'm bringing to the reading of them is a certain ingrained obviousness from playing for 40 plus years, 45 plus years now. Jeez. And 47 years, 74, right? But with these rules, a little less. Nevertheless, this is meant to be a helpful section for dungeon masters and even players to help explain some spells. There are some explanations where Gary attributes certain motivations to players that are less than flattering, and that's why you need to be, you know, watch out for players that try to exploit this. In other words, that sort of thing. And I guess that's good advice because back in those days there were even regular jokes, and they persist to these days, of Monty Hall campaigns, which is to say games where players are given great rewards for very little effort and no real challenge other than to choose A or B or C as a direction or as a mission, and well, this is what you win, and here comes this big prize package. So there were definitely some game masters, some dungeon masters who were less than challenging for their players, and there were others that felt a need to be acquiescing more toward players rather than challenging them. And I can tell you that it seems like it would be fun for players to get their way on a lot of things early and often, but if you're a player who enjoys games and enjoys the challenge of games, that very quickly becomes rather boring, rather sad. So, a great deal of the advice in here is meant to be bolstering dungeon masters in their efforts to make the game challenging and to make campaigns last a good long time. So think of it in that regard, and I think you'll find that it's fair. It's fair game. Where we left off was 7th level spells, so I'm going to have a look at that right away. Uh, we're still in the cleric section, which is one of the bigger sections of the four: clerics, druids, magic users, and illusionists. Illusionists one of the trickier ones. I tend not to use illusionists in my game, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Some of the explanations may help bolster my reasoning for not using them in the first place. Illusionary magic is on its face difficult to play because the entire game system's an illusion already. So where do you go from there? And we'll talk about that. Astral Spell. Any magic items can go into the astral plane, but most will become non-magical thereon or on any planes removed from the prime material plane. Those which contain spells which you determine will function on any given plane will function on that plane. Armor and weapons, which are +3 or better, might also function on other planes, but this is at your option. All artifacts and relics should be allowed to function anywhere. Items which draw their power from a particular plane will be likely to be far more powerful on the plane from whence their power comes. That is to say, a ring of fire resistance on the elemental plane of fire, or a sword of life stealing on the negative material plane. For creatures encountered, see Appendix C, Random Monsters Encountered, Astral and Ethereal Encounter Tables. From whence, don't need from. Whence includes from in its definition. It's a pedantic pet peeve that I think Gary would actually appreciate. So, magic only functioning mainly on its own plane, but with the exception of +3 or better, is that to say there's some bleed over with stronger magics that it can draw? The magic that imbues it from other planes, and so the more powerful it is, the more likely that would happen. Artifacts and relics, essentially, I guess, the point being made that they have their own power source in a way. They empowers the powers rather than the magic that is fed by a certain power is actually in them already. It's items which draw their power from a particular plane will be likely to be more powerful. So the fire resistance, elemental plane of fire. But does a fire resistance ring draw from the fire, or would it draw from the opposite? If it resists fire, can it not draw from the other three? Well, that's an interesting point, right? It thwarts fire. How does it draw? Of course, it wouldn't be useful except on that plane rather than the other three elemental planes. So, kind of opposite point. But life stealing on a negative material plane makes a certain amount of sense. So there's a bit of confusion in this and how it works. This is another reason why I tend to avoid using plane hopping, planes hopping in my games. I like having alternate dimensions, but not planes specifically, just pocket dimensions, little places where there's a space inside a space, if you will, a la the TARDIS or whatever, a place you can store stuff, hide stuff, squirrel stuff away, but not necessarily a space for um, where you can go like it's a whole nother world, a whole additional dimension. I like the idea, in essence, of astral and ethereal planes and being parallel, occupying the same space, but being slightly apart. In a sense, I like that, but some of the implementation when it comes to the spells here are problematic already. So, I don't know. Make your decisions. Be careful about what you do. Be consistent. If you just follow the party line here, you probably can't go too far wrong, although some of it is maybe counterintuitive. Decide. Make your best guess. Stick with it. It's always the best advice, and sometimes it's the only advice, sadly. But there it is. Control Weather says to find the prevailing conditions at the time the spell is cast, you must know the climb and the season, of course. Sky conditions, cloudy, foggy, partly cloudy, clear, precipitation, wind speed, and direction. And temperature must be determined according to the area. Knowing this, you should have no great problem informing the would-be spellcaster as to what sort of weather exists. So they're saying you got to kind of keep track of the weather, make it happen, be a regular. Look at me not hiding behind the thing anymore. make it a regular part of the campaign in the game is to grab some weather tables and just create them as you go. Create weather for any given day. A few times a day it can change, right? Some of the best weather tables I've seen start with a basic weather plan for certain climates, and you got to determine where you are on a planet, and if it functions like our Earth does, then you should be able to have a pretty easy time finding some charts that work that way. And things change by degree, right? It's very rare for something to change by a great temperature or to change. Sudden storms can blow up. Um, sudden temperatures can suddenly drop or heighten, and we see more and more of that these years, more recent years. But make sure your weather charts, whatever you get, account for that sort of radicalness, but keeps it rare. And then if you can just roll up some random temperatures, keep it handy on a DM screen, and just make sure it's something you can do quickly. And that way you're not spending a lot of time at the game table dealing with it. That's my advice on that. Earthquake. Structures very solidly built with foundations reaching to bedrock will sustain half damage. Castles so built will take only 1/4 damage if they score above 50% on a saving throw roll. An Earth Elemental in the spell area has the effect of negating 10% to 100% of the spell effects if the elemental is of forces opposed to the cleric casting the earthquake spell. Alright, those are some ups and extras basically on the spell that weren't a part of it. Gate. Druid Spells will start here after we'll finish up the 7th level. Gate. Unless you have some facts regarding the minion serving the being called forth by the casting of the gate spell, it is necessary to have the being called come. Then, if it is a trifle, it can leave or attack. If it is of middling importance, it can take some positive action to set matters aright and then demand appropriate repayment. And if the matter is urgent, it can act accordingly and ask whatever is its want thereafter, if appropriate. However, Asmodeus might send a pit fiend to see what the problem was, and some deity of law, good, of lawful good, might send a Kirin on the same mission. As to the likelihood of the gated being returning without doing something, use a factor of 20% for a trifling matter, 15% of return if the affair is of medial importance, and 1 to 50% if the matter is very important, 1% indicating that the being finds itself well able to handle the situation and everything pleases or displeases it greatly. 50% if the situation would be risky and it is displeased. Thus, Asmodeus, summoned by a party of chaotic good characters to save them from a type 6 demon, could be a trifle to an important act, depending on what was involved, such as a relic of lawful evil. Asmodeus would certainly do away with the summoners as well as the demon if at all possible. On the other hand, Asmodeus summoned to pit himself against Bahamut would be very likely to turn and do a speedy exit unless the matter was of critical importance to hell. So, that's one of those powerful spells that really really kind of bends the reality of any campaign world in that you can use that spell to bring forth from wherever they exist a demon, a devil rather, very important, but perhaps a minor deity, and request. There's no demand. You're not forcing them to do your bidding. You're forcing them to come. And at that point, they have to assess whether their presence was really necessary if you did them a favor by bringing them to come deal with a problem that would have been more problematic later for them, or is something that is against their interest that they really should take care of. So you have to put yourself in the position of that individual that you bring forth and decide whether they will be happy about the fact that you have them at your beck and call. And then whether they'll deal with the problem or not, whatever it is, and then how they'll deal with you afterwards. Whether it's just saying, okay, I did this, I'm going to take this magic item and that magic item from you as payment and give them to people that serve me rather than people that call me to serve them. And what are you going to do about it? Obviously, if you're gating something like that in, it's a pretty tough situation for you that you couldn't handle on your own. So anything that is able to handle it is likely to have some power over you. So yeah, make your decisions based on circumstantial information and move on from there. Let's look at Holy Unholy Word. The speaker must be from the plane upon which it speaks in order to have the utterance send the other creatures to their own plane. A devil on the prime material plane could not use the spell to send away anything, although it could so do if it were in hell. Creatures sent to their original plane cannot return for a day. Creatures slowed by such a spell lose their first round of attack and each odd number round of attack thereafter until the duration of the effect wears off. Okay, simply a clarification of the actual spell. Just a little more information without any judgment calls to make. Restoration would be next. The spell will cure any and all forms of insanity. Okay, so previous video we were talking about the heal spell not being able to do just this. So this is the spot where it says, here's how you deal with that. Should have been a reference in the other spell, though, in the other spell explanation. Not in the other spell, because obviously these wouldn't need to exist if they'd had put this, incorporated this into the player's handbook. And it's the intervening time between the player's handbook coming out and this coming out where these situations cropped up that they felt warranted the extra explanations. Tell you what, we're pretty far along, but that's it for the cleric spells. We're going to jump right into the druid spells. We've got time to make a dent in these as well. This is probably going to be like a 6, 7, maybe an 8-part series. Maybe I'll take a break from them after I do the cleric and druid spells and come back and do the other half down the line and jump around and stuff. Or maybe I'll just keep plugging along with them. In the druid spells, first level spells include detect magic. Only the fact that a dim or strong magic exists in the area will be noted. Similar to the magic user spell of the same name. Locate animals. Yeah, this one's always tricky, right? Especially with non-traditional settings where the animals aren't just the same animals, generally speaking, that you'd have on Earth. You do have to make a distinction between what's an animal and what's a monster. Do monsters monsters really aren't affected by animal spells. There wouldn't be summon monster spells as there are summon animal spells. So Locate Animal says this spell is another which requires a bit of effort on the part of the DM, as it is quite unlikely that each and every species of animal in the area of the spellcaster will be recorded. You will have to use the probabilities of your milieu. Obviously, there is a 0% chance of locating a polar bear in the jungle or a jungle cat in the caverns thousands of feet below ground, etc. So, the locale is second after the region as to whether or not some animal will be within the spell range. Then consider the terrain. Mountain lions do not typically roam the prairies, for instance. Lastly, consider the frequency of the animal desired in relation to all of the above. If the animal is within the area of probability, allow a straight percentile roll for frequency. Common 50% chance, uncommon 25% chance, rare 10, very rare 5. Circumstances will always prevail, so modify as necessary to allow for the surroundings. So it's a common sense check there. Speak with animals as noted for the cleric spell of the same name. This magic will not make animals altogether friendly and cooperative. So keep in mind the attitudes of certain animals and their personalities, if you will. Second level, Animal Friendship. This spell will only function if the druid actually wishes to be the animal's friend. If the druid has ulterior motives, the animals will always sense it. That's an interesting change from just the straight sort of randomness of the spell itself. It is to say that animals have an innate sense of danger, if you will. Charmed person or mammal. If at the same time this spell is cast, the subject is struck by any spell, missile, weapon, or weapon which inflicts damage, the creature will make a saving throw at +1 per point of damage sustained. Naturally, this assumes damage is inflicted by members of the spellcaster's party. So, there's a clarification that apparently cropped up fairly often enough that it needed a notation clarification, which is to say that some spellcasters would be casting a charm spell, and simultaneously the other party members have not been informed or have not are not of a belief that that spell might work apparently, and continue to attack or whatever and cause damage at the same time. So it doesn't foil the spell completely, I guess is the point really. They get a bonus to their saving throw. It's still powerful magic, so while you get a bonus to a saving throw, it doesn't just negate the spell from happening. Um, I was always of a mind that even if you charm someone and then you continue to be hit by others that are in league with the person who charmed you, that the charm's not going to last, right? Remember that a charmed creature's or person's priorities are changed as regards to the spellcaster, but the charmed one's basic personality and alignment are not. The spell is not enslave person or mammal. A request that a charmee make itself defenseless, or that he, she, it be required to give up a valued item, or cast a valuable spell, or use a charge on a valued item, especially against the charmee's former associates or allies, could allow an immediate saving throw to see if the charm is thrown off. In a like manner, a charmed figure will not necessarily tell everything he, she, it knows or draw maps of entire areas. A charmed figure can refuse a request. If such refusal is in character, it will not directly cause harm to the charmer. Also, a charm spell does not substantially alter the charmee's feelings toward the charmer's friends and allies. The charmed person or creature will not react well to the charmer's allies making suggestions like, ask him this question. The charmee is oriented toward the friendship and acceptance of the charmer, but this does not mean that he, she, it will put up with verbal or physical abuse from the charmer's associates. So, they're not, they can hear what's going on around them. If people are snarling or suggesting cruelty or anything like that, then the charmee does not have to take it. They can step up and challenge that sort of situation, invoking the charmer's sense of friendship to the charmee, right? Saying, "Hey, you got to let this guy talk like this over here? What's going on? He's saying you should force me to do this or that, or make me do things that are not in my best interest. And you're my friend. Aren't we friends? So play it up. Don't let somebody just be a mindless zombie doing whatever is suggested by the charmer or by the charmer's friends for sure. Create water. It is not possible to create water within living material. It's not possible to cast a spell upon a creature and create liquid in any part of its body. So you can't explode someone from the inside like a water balloon. Feign Death. The recipient of this streamer consumes air at 1/100th of the normal rate. Any poison within the system of the spell of recipient is effectively slowed so as to cause no harm whatsoever for the duration of the spell. So that's like a minor slow poison spell, or it can be used that way. Fire Trap. The spell can be removed, negated by a dispel magic as is normal. Heat Metal. Elven Chain is not subject to this spell. All Ferrous-based magic armor is entitled to a saving throw versus magical fire. If the save is successful, the Heat Metal spell does not affect it. Locate plants. For the likelihood of any given plant type to be within the area of the spell, consult the foregoing discussion regarding spell to locate animals. It will generally be more difficult to adjudicate matters botanical, however, as the distribution of plant species is not as widely known as that of animals. As a rule, most herbs will grow only in temperate regions, no spices in tropical regions. If you have never heard of the plant, assume it is rare or very rare, and give it appropriate percentages. If you've never heard of the plant, assume it is rare or very rare and give it appropriate percentages. Fair enough. Obscurement. A gust of wind spell will likely cause the vapor to swirl and dissipate in 25% of the normal time, so that instead of obscurement lasting for 4 rounds per level, it will last for but 1 round once the gust of wind has been cast, of course. Pretty simple, just clarifying what two spells combined, how they will affect each other. Produce flame. If the druid chooses to hurl the flame, treat it as a missile, but any target is considered to be at short range. If a miss occurs, use the grenade-like missile principle to determine where the flame strikes. So, you can cause unintended fires with that. Warp wood. Attempting to affect the wood of a magically held or wizard locked door is another matter. The level of the druid is compared to the level of the magic user, and only if the latter is of lower level than the former will the spell have any chance of working. For each level of experience greater than the magic user, the druid has a 20% chance of warping Dwemer wood. So, great on a mechanically or just physically barred door. And I've seen this used to great effect in campaigns I've run. But if there's magic involved, make sure that comes under play. Um, oh, Sarah, hey, how you doing today? How would create water interact with constructs like golems? Well, yeah, right. Create water inside. I guess as a DM, you'd have to decide in your campaigns if a golem is hollow or not, right? If there's no space to create that. Now it says living, so you could also decide that anything that is animated is similarly living, or at least you can say that carries over. Although then you'd have to also make a decision in your campaigns about whether or not undead are living, because they are animated dead, are they not? But I'd start with whether or not the golems are hollow. Um, I think flesh golems are meant to be almost like Frankenstein monster type creatures, which would mean they have an circulatory system. If they are actually using that circulatory system, are they not indeed already living? If they are, say, an iron golem, maybe they're just like a giant suit of armor, in which case there are hollow areas inside. But does that water affect them, or does it just flow out through the cracks in the hinges and the joints and whatnot? So, a number of things to consider. It depends on how golems are in your own world. It's my advice of what to look for, I think. Anywho, that takes us past the time, so we're going to shut her down for the day. And we're going to say thank you to everybody, especially you, Sarah, for the question, too. If you are someone who is following the channel, do us a favor and be sure to follow us. Follow the Twitch channel if you're in the stream, is what I'm trying to say. We're here every week from 10 a.m., usually about a half hour, on Monday and on Thursday. So be sure to stop on by if you can and sit in on it. If you're catching up with this on YouTube, by all means, do subscribe to the channel and click the little bell to be notified of when new episodes are uploaded. And then also, if you would please give us a thumbs up on any videos that you like and enjoy. We'd appreciate any feedback, so feel free to make comments on YouTube videos as well. This has been the OK Grognard Show from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Bye-bye.